Hey, Tim Frisch with A Frisch Perspective here. In this video, I wanted to show a clip of Pastor John MacArthur talking about Pastor James Coates and GraceLife Church. Pastor Coates, I believe, sent a letter to Grace Community Church, and John MacArthur is going to read that during the church service. And I believe this took place yesterday, August 11th, 2021. So I'll play some of this clip. I will also leave a link to this video in this video description if you'd like to watch the whole thing, but I wanted to play a little bit of it here.
As we begin our worship today, I have a great privilege and honor, before we have a word of prayer and sing a hymn, to read a letter to you. This morning, GraceLife Church up in Alberta, Canada, is meeting somewhere. We don't know where. James Coates said at this point it's not for the public to know. Amazing to have an underground church in Canada. This because the government of Alberta triple fenced the church in and locked it so people couldn't go there. I think the latest statistics I've seen are that 2,000 people have died through the months of COVID, 80% of them in senior homes. The remaining ones had some kind of comorbidity out of the millions of people who live in Alberta. So there's no legitimate reason to do what they did to this church, especially at this point in the COVID life. But they did. And this is a first for the Western world to have the government lock out believers from a church, and that after imprisoning James Coates, who's a graduate of the Master's Seminary, in maximum security prison. They led him away in chains, and he was there for about 35 days. Many of you have been praying for GraceLife Church, and the scene is changing. There's a massive outcry against the government for doing this, and I'm praying along with you that this will draw attention to that church, to him, and to the gospel.
So John MacArthur there talking about how GraceLife Church is going underground, and he said that they haven't disclosed publicly as to where they're meeting. One of the things that I wanted to mention again is I talked before about how governments can shut down church buildings, but they really can't shut down the church. And I think this is a good example of that GraceLife Church's building has been shut down, but the church is going to continue to meet. They're going to find ways to meet. But I can see why they haven't publicly disclosed where they're meeting, because that will probably just get them into more of a thorny issue than they're already in. I know a lot of people are going to take issue with GraceLife Church. They already have. But I do like what Pastor MacArthur there said, that this really is an opportunity to draw attention to the gospel. And these are difficult things. I know a lot of people think this is really about COVID. It has nothing to do with persecution of Christianity. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments. Just please try to keep your comments constructive and helpful to conversation, like I always say. But other people do feel that this is a form of persecution. Now, where I live in the United States in New Hampshire, I found out about a bill that's going through our government here in New Hampshire, and this really speaks to the very issue that's being talked about here. And in New Hampshire, it says here that the House passes bill to exempt houses of worship from public health orders. The bill would prevent state from closing churches, synagogues, and mosques. The article says churches and other houses of worship will be exempt from emergency public health orders that prevent large gatherings under legislation passed Friday by the New Hampshire House. Now, I think it still probably needs to go through the Senate, so the bill hasn't officially been adopted yet. At least that's my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong on that. So I don't think it's officially law, but this is what they're trying to pass. For the faithful, one of the most difficult aspects of the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic was the closure of houses of worship. The bill passed by the House would prevent the state from shuttering churches, mosques, synagogues, and other holy gathering spaces in future emergencies. So what this is really saying is that the state can't do to churches what happened to GraceLife Church in Alberta. The article goes on here, the state won't be able to just outright close churches when other services, such as liquor stores, hardware stores, Target, Walmart, etc., are opened and declared essential, said Representative Keith Ammon, Republican, New Boston. House Bill 542 passed with Republican support Friday. Its sponsors said the government trampled on the free exercise of religion last year. They said the legislation would prevent that from happening again by preventing the state from enforcing any health, safety, or occupancy requirements that impose a substantial burden on religious services. So one of the things that's really being brought out in this whole discussion is that you can have certain entities that are deemed essential, even things like Walmart. And yes, there is an argument to be made that Walmart has essential products, but Walmart also has a lot of non-essential products, and people are able to go there, but churches, their buildings are being closed down. And that really is an infringement, a lot of people are arguing, upon the freedom of the exercise of religion. Reading on, it says Democrats oppose the bill. I don't believe we need a new law that prioritizes religious freedoms over public health and safety in a crisis, said Representative Alexis Simpson, Republican, Exeter. Opponents pointed out that houses of worship adapted during the pandemic and were still able to find ways to gather or connect safely. Many congregations have used creative solutions to worship within the bounds of public health protocols, said Representative Charlotte DeLorenzo, Democrat, Newmarket. Supporters of the bill said that if it becomes law, the government could still issue pandemic guidance, but they said religious liberty is such a fundamental right that no one should have to submit to the state or get creative in order to worship. So I know that there's going to be a lot of cheering on the side of people who are really advocating for religious freedom and really do see church and meeting as a church as essential. And I know a lot of people who watch this channel would really be behind that. Of course, there are people who watch this channel, and certainly a lot of people in our culture who would be opposed to this. So I'd love to hear, again, what you think in the comments below. And finishing up here, the article says, HB 542 reinforces that right by guaranteeing the free exercise of religion in an emergency, while preserving the right of the government to require religious organizations to comply with neutral health and safety regulations, said Representative Mark McLean, Republican, Manchester. So it sounds like religious organizations will have to comply to a certain degree as long as those regulations are neutral. But I think, if I'm understanding this correctly, they're saying it's not neutral to keep certain entities open and deem them as essential, but then shut down religious houses of worship, which really inhibits the free exercise of religion, and that is a protected right. So it's really great to see that New Hampshire is taking proactive action on this whole issue and actually seeking to prevent something like what's happening to GraceLife in Alberta. So I thought it was really interesting, the contrast here with what is happening to GraceLife Church and what's happening here in New Hampshire in our government system right now. Now, I will say that New Hampshire is one of the most hands-off states when it comes to government. There are other states also that are more oriented towards small government, but New Hampshire is one of those states that doesn't have a sales tax or state income tax. So it really is a lot more hands-off in terms of government intervention. So this is really making sure that it puts priority on religious freedom. And the state motto here in New Hampshire is actually live free or die. So it's good to see they're trying to uphold that freedom that New Hampshire citizens really value deeply. But obviously it's not just New Hampshire. United States citizens value freedom deeply. So it will be interesting to see what other states do, and even if this were to come to the Supreme Court in the future regarding other states, it'd be interesting to see what happens. But it is sad to see what's happening in Canada right now. It's something that I've been highlighting. I know a lot of people are definitely reacting to it. So that's my little report here. I hope that it was helpful and interesting to you. Thank you so much, though, for listening to some of my thoughts from A Frisch Perspective.